everybody out there in podcast land. Welcome to the latest episode of Sports Frenzy 2.0, a Midwestern tradition through YouTube, through cable access television, and now through podcasting. I am the Maestro Kevin Crane. Glad to have you aboard. Your Uncle Dave, the Conquistador Dave Height, is off this week. Not his fault, my fault. Been under the weather the last 3 or 4 days, just starting to get my energy levels back up. Dave will be back next week. We'll have plenty to talk about. We've already got a couple headlines in the NFL we're going to carry over to next week for he and I to discuss, because there's a lot of NFL to talk about. And of course, this time of year, you know. First segment is all about the NFL. Taping here on November the 1st, 2023. This will hit tomorrow morning, Thursday, November the 2nd. First up, NFL trade deadline has come and gone. Some very interesting moves. We'll get to the Bears in a minute. It's amazing to me how San Francisco can continue to make these moves year after year after year. Of course, last year it was Christian McCaffrey, and now this year they get Chase Young, defensive end from the Commanders, for a third-round pick. Now, it's not so much about the draft picks. They get draft picks for having a great organization and people hiring away their personnel. I'm just sitting here amazed at how they're able to fit all of these players under the salary cap. And yes, I know the key to all of this, unlike with most of the other teams in the NFL, is that they're not paying their quarterback jack shit. But still, it's just amazing to me. Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, Deebo Samuel. I don't even think Brendan Ayuk's getting paid all that much yet. I could be wrong. But then you've got Bosa. You've got offensive linemen, defensive secondary players. I mean, I have to get on Spot Track and see how they're making this work. Kudos to the 49ers, because they are in the midst of a 3-game tailspin. Kind of shocking. I'm beginning to wonder not so much if Brock Purdy's not a good quarterback. I think he is. But going through the concussion and then getting, in my opinion, rushed back. Now, I've heard differing reports about this. I think he was rushed back. I think it was obvious that at the end of last week's loss, something was wrong when he threw the pick at the end to seal the deal as they lost to the Vikings. And then, of course, he throws a couple more picks here in a loss to the Cincinnati Bengals at home. I am not a doctor. I only play one on a podcast. But seems to me most of the time players sit out at least one game after they enter concussion protocol. Just seems a little hasty pushing Brock Purdy back in. Now they have a bye week. Would have made a lot more sense to me if you'd sat him, let Sam Darnold play. Yes, it was a big game against the Bengals, but now they got a bye week. Would have given him a couple weeks off, get his head straight, come back out for the second half of the season firing on all cylinders, mentally as well as physically. Other trade news. The Vikings, of course, devastating injury to Kirk Cousins, who I agree was playing at an MVP level. A lot of other people have been coming out, of course, after he tears his Achilles, saying, oh, Kirk Cousins was playing great. He was in the MVP discussion. Didn't hear anything about that until he went down. But I agree. The way he had brought the Vikings back from 1-4 back to 4-4, back into the playoff picture in the NFC, and then tears his Achilles, out for the year, doesn't have a contract for next year. I would think somebody's going to pay the man. Maybe not 40 or 50 million, but he should be fine. But what about the Vikings? How do they keep the momentum going? Their top two players now. Kirk Cousins out for the year. Who knows when Justin Jefferson's going to come back? They pick up Joshua Dobbs, who has been starting for the Arizona Cardinals. Not a bad signing. Low risk, high reward. We'll see how quickly he can acclimate to the offense. For now, we're hearing they're going to start the rookie, which, of course, makes you a little bit worried as they go down to Atlanta to play the Falcons. The running game for the Vikings has not been good. Thanks a lot, Alexander Mattison, one of my two big-time sleeper picks in fantasy football this year. At least Evan Ingram's played halfway decent. Alexander Mattison has sucked. And Cam Akers is starting to take touches away to the point where it's almost a committee. And we know how much in fantasy football we love committees when it comes to running backs. New York Giants trade Leonard Williams to Seattle, so Seattle bolsters their interior defensive line. And bizarrely, utterly, completely bizarrely, all these trades happening with teams that are, of course, in contention, that are fighting for playoff spots. The Chicago Bears, of course it had to be the Bears. For the second year in a row, trade away a second-round pick. Hopefully, I don't see how it could be any worse than last year trading for Chase Claypool. That was just idiotic to begin with. And then, of course, he just bitches and pisses his moans his way out of Chicago to Miami. So let's flush another second-round pick down the toilet. Now, in terms of the talent of the player, I'm much more impressed with Montez Sweat. I didn't like the Chase Claypool deal to begin with last year because I thought Chase Claypool was overrated. Now, Montez Sweat is a great player. Here's the issue. You trade away a second-round pick to get him. You got him for half the season, and he's going to be a free agent. So you've given him all the leverage he needs when it comes to bargaining for a new contract. Because if he ends up going somewhere else, you're going to look even more foolish than you did with Chase Claypool, because Chase Claypool at least had an extra year where you could see if he would fit into the offense, what great offense it is. You had Chase Claypool for a year and a half. Now you've got Montez Sweat for half a year. He has got all the leverage. He will now be able to extract unbelievable amounts of money from the Bears just so they can avoid looking stupid, which they love to do, which they have done dozens and dozens of times this year alone. Please, for the love of God, McCaskey family, sell the goddamn team. You obviously have no infrastructure. You have idiots hiring idiots in the front office. You're buffoons. You're embarrassing us as Bears fans. You're morons. Sell the goddamn team. But I digress. How about Will Levis slips in the last draft earlier this year, the 2023 draft, all the way to the second round when he was initially projected to possibly be a top 10 pick. Fighting to possibly be the backup to Ryan Tannehill, fighting with Malik Willis. Well, guess what? Will Levis finally gets his chance to shine due to Tannehill's injury, due to Willis's ineptitude, and becomes a very rare commodity. One of the few quarterbacks in NFL history to throw 4 touchdown passes in his debut game. Good for him. Good for him. Even if he puts mayonnaise in his coffee, good for him. Another person etching their name into the NFL record books is A.J. Brown of the Philadelphia Eagles. Becomes the first player ever to have 6 straight games with 125 or more receiving yards. And this, remember, all came after he complained in one game early in the year about not getting enough looks from Jalen Hurts. So sometimes these wide receivers know what they're doing. Jamar Chase has done this earlier this year. And again, the minute they do it, the quarterbacks go, okay, let me start looking for you a little bit more. And of course, these high-level superstar receivers will make it happen. They will get open. They will make the catches. They've just got to kind of go, hey, I'm over here. Wake up. Start throwing the ball to me. And more often than not, it seems to work. But you've got to be one of those top 6, 7, 8 receivers in the league to do it. You can't be Chase Claypool and bitch and piss and moan about it. But A.J. Brown, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson could do it. Those kind of guys, Tyreek Hill, they're the ones that can do it. Lord, did we see some bad football again this past weekend. And Dave and I have been talking about this as a recurring theme this entire year. Bad football. It might not have gotten any worse, though, than the Giants and the Jets. Tyrod Taylor gets hurt. The Giants forced to go with their third-string quarterback, Tommy DeVito. While he ran for a touchdown, passing numbers not all that great. Completed 2 passes for -1 yards. The Giants as a whole passed in the entire game for -9. The Jets weren't much better. The teams combined for 24 punts, the second most ever in NFL history. But the Jets somehow figured out a way to win in overtime. Huh. Ha! 13-10. What a joke. Again, another bad football game. Speaking of bad football games, as we look at our teams for this week, the Bears lose to the Chargers on Sunday Night Football 30-13. What do you want me to say about it? Chargers, even with an idiot head coach, are much more talented than the Bears. Bears are 2-6 now if you're keeping track at home, but the amazing thing is those 2 wins will probably keep them from getting the number 1 pick in the draft. Yes, I know Carolina could still end up being the worst team in the league and helping the Bears out, but they just won their first game. Cardinals maybe are going to bring back Kyler Murray. Would you, if you were Arizona, or would you just go into tankathon mode to try to get the quarterback of your choice next year? Dolphins 6-2, heading over to Germany to play the Chiefs. Beat the Patriots 31-17. Tyreek Hill still on pace for 2,000 yards receiving. And then, of course, my Buccaneers lose to the Bills 24-18. Wasn't that close. This is the Buccaneers team I kind of expected. They had a nice little start there to the season. They're now 3-4. Not looking very promising for the rest of the season. The Raiders are the first team to pull the trigger and fire their head coach. Josh McDaniels is out, as is general manager David Ziegler with the LV Raiders. 4.5 years left on Josh McDaniels' contract. Another example of how sometimes life is just not fucking fair. Because Josh McDaniels can now sit on his ass for 4.5 years, making millions upon millions upon millions of dollars, doing nothing because of a stupid contract and a stupid hiring by Mark Davis and the Las Vegas Raiders. And their first move, based on what I saw on Monday Night Football, that train wreck of a game, another example of bad football, as the Lions beat the Raiders. Jimmy Garoppolo is awful. So he has been benched by the new regime, the temporary new regime with the Raiders. All right, looking back at a couple other games from last week before we move on to this week's picks. Cowboys paced the LA Rams 43-20. So now everybody, oh, the Cowboys are back. The Cowboys are back. They're Super Bowl contenders. Would you stop? Would you stop? Gotta get sick of this Cowboys hype. The Rams aren't that good. They weren't that good last year, and they're not that good this year. Injuries have taken a toll. Now Matthew Stafford has got an injured thumb on his throwing hand. I think it's his thumb, finger or thumb. Sprain, either way, going to be very hard to throw the ball this week if he plays. Of course, we mentioned the Vikings getting to 4-4, going into Lambeau Field, beating the woeful Packers. Of course, most of the damage was done before Kirk Cousins went out with that torn Achilles. How about Jordan Love? Not your third straight Hall of Fame quarterback, Green Bay. Not even close. We talked about Will Levis as the Titans beat the Falcons 28-23. As much as I love Gardner Minshew, I want to get Minshew mania started again. They let the Saints come in to Lucas Oil Stadium down in Indianapolis and beat them up a little bit, 38-27. The Saints win. The Saints now, as I expected, in a very, very piss-poor NFC South, are now starting to move up ahead and become the curdled cream of the crop in that division. Bad weather, Jaguars and Steelers in Pittsburgh. Again, the Jaguars aren't quite looking cohesive yet. They're not quite looking as sharp, as good as I thought they would, but they're still winning. They are still winning. Sometimes ugly, but they're still winning. This was an ugly one, 20-10, as they beat the Steelers. The Steelers, that offense is pitiful. Kenny Pickett got hurt. Mitch Trubisky comes in. Of course, Mitch Trubisky, no improvement. We'll see who quarterbacks the Steelers here coming up on a short week as they play Thursday night. We'll get to that pick in just a minute. Seahawks in Seattle beat the Browns 24-20. Of course, Deshaun Watson, now basically an NBA player in the NFL, deciding when he's going to play, if he's going to play, and there's nothing you can do about it because I've got a fully guaranteed goddamn contract, so I can just take my toys and go home, and you still got to pay me. Ha ha! Even though I'm a pervo and a degenerate, ha ha, I won. and Cleveland fans get screwed again. Then, of course, we mentioned the big game of the week. The Bengals impressively going in to Santa Clara, beating the 49ers 31-17. Joe Burrow looks, fingers crossed, fully healthy, finally. They actually put Joe Mixon in positions to score, to gain yardage, to help out, to take pressure off the passing game. Defense looked solid, not great, but solid. This Bengals team, I'm telling you, they are going to be a force to be reckoned with, despite a brutal schedule that they've got. And we'll talk more about that here in a minute. The Bengals are still now, if they are truly fully healthy and if they stay healthy, a force to be reckoned with again to go all the way to the Super Bowl. So let's get into this week's picks. Thursday, November the 2nd, the red-hot Will Levis going in to play his second NFL game. Going to have to deal with the terrible towels in Pittsburgh. We talked about the Steelers, a little banged up. Minkah Fitzpatrick is hurt. Don't know if it's going to be Kenny Pickett or Mitch Trubisky at quarterback. Running game is almost non-existent. Najee Harris is turning out to be a massive bust. I think we can pretty much write him off now. Jaylen Warren looks a little bit better as the lead back. Again, running back by committee. We love that when it comes to fantasy football. We got 7 of our 8 panelists with their picks in. Dave and I are going with the Steelers. I think, don't want to presume to speak for him, but I think we're going with the defense. That defense harassed Trevor Lawrence all game long last Sunday. They were impressive for the most part, except for one really terrible shit-the-bed game against the Texans. They have looked every bit the part of a typical Steelers defense. And I think Will Levis, he's not going to throw for 4 TDs again, kids. Not going to happen. Okay, this is not the Falcons' defense. Steelers for Dave and I, everybody else taking the Titans. And then, of course, Sunday, the 5th of November, we start off with the game from Germany, the first of 2 early morning football here in the U.S. Yay! I love it. I love it when I can wake up and watch football nonstop until I go to bed. Yes, I have no life. This is a huge game. Of course, you know it. You love it. The Dolphins and the Chiefs. The Chiefs have not looked impressive this year to me. I'm sorry, they have not. They find ways to win, similar to what we just talked about with the Jacksonville Jaguars. They're finding ways to win. They have great coaches. They have solid quarterbacks. Jacksonville has a great running back. The Chiefs have the best tight end possibly in history. That being said, our panel, believe it or not, Dave and I, along with Sam and Aaron, go with the Dolphins. Kind of surprising. Bill, Nick, and Doug go with the Chiefs. Next up, the Vikings at Atlanta to play the Falcons. 2 teams trying to stay in the playoff picture. We've talked about the Vikings, the awful injury to Kirk Cousins. Falcons might have decided enough with Desmond Ridder. Let's go with Taylor Heineke. Second half of that game against the Titans, Heineke looked a lot better. The offense looked a lot better. I would imagine the Artie Party will shift to Taylor Heineke and the Falcons because, again, a rookie quarterback. I can't believe Josh Dobbs will be up to speed yet. In Atlanta with Taylor Heineke, I'll take the Falcons Actually, everybody of the 7 panelists with picks in do, except for Doug. He goes with the Vikings. Rams at Packers. Boy, this has got ugly written all over it. Who knows if Matthew Stafford's going to play? Rippon will play if Matt Stafford can't go. Rookie phenom Puka Nacua is hurt. We don't know if he's going to play. Of course, Kyron Williams, their young phenom running back, is still on IR. Boy, what an ugly game to pick. I believe it or not, I am going to go with Jordan Love and the Packers at home in an ugly, low-scoring, maybe a field goal game. The only other panelist with me is Nick. The other 5 guys take the Rams. Commanders at the Patriots. Commanders, of course, we talked about how they had the fire sale, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Montez Sweat, gone. Chase Young, gone. Sam Howell looked decent, really good at times. A quarterback for the Commanders. Going up to Foxborough, though, despite the fact they are not even close to being in the playoff hunt, Bill Belichick will not let this team fall down to abysmal depths. I got to believe the Patriots win this game. The demoralized Commanders. Ron Rivera probably going to be the next coach to be fired, if not Matt Eberflus in Chicago. Patriots for everybody except the Big Blue W takes the Commanders. Seahawks at Ravens. No love for the Seahawks on the panel. Despite the fact they are leading the NFC West, the Ravens just look really good right now. Ravens across the board. Buccaneers at Texans. Yeah, the Texans had a bad game against Carolina, but the Buccaneers are starting to show who they truly and really are. I think young C.J. Stroud will bounce back. Probably another ugly game, but Texans, for everybody except Doug and Aaron, they go with Tampa Bay. Oh, the Cowboys are back. The Cowboys are back. No, they're not. Nobody's buying into this on our panel. We're too damn smart for that. Cowboys going to Philadelphia to play the Eagles in a big, massive showdown. Guess what? Everybody on the panel with picks in, all 7 of us, taking Philadelphia. We're not fooled by this. This is typical Dallas Cowboys. Big blowout win against a team they should have beaten. The Eagles are the better team, possibly the best team in the NFL. Ooh, Sunday night, the Bills going into Cincinnati to play the Bengals. Massive game. I told you, the Bengals have a brutal schedule. Brutal. And the Bills, theirs isn't much easier. Heard today, maybe possibly a little bit dinged up Josh Allen. I don't think it'll keep him from playing, but like I mentioned earlier, Bengals are healthy. Bengals are at home. Bengals are back on a roll. Got to be on a high after beating up on the 49ers. 4-3 split on the panel. Dave and I, Sam, and Aaron take Cincinnati. The Big Blue W, Nick and Doug take Buffalo. And finally, to wrap up segment 1, Monday night, November the 6th, the Chargers, the LA Chargers go into New York MetLife to play the Jets. Yes, the Jets have a fantastic defense. But again, the Chargers are so much more talented, even with it's a battle of 2 idiot coaches. Let's put it that way. I'll take the more talented team with the idiot coach. Zach Wilson has looked abysmal. He is not an NFL quarterback. Chargers for everybody on the panel except Doug. He takes the Jets, Jets. So there you go, kids. NFL is over and done. College football coming up next. I'm the Maestro. We'll be right back.
Hi,
My name is Kyrie Irving, NBA superstar of the Cleveland Cavaliers. I mean the Boston Celtics. Whoops. Brooklyn Nets. Damn. Dallas Mavericks. And while I may leave a trail of wreckage wherever I go, I still like to spend my off time listening to Sports Frenzy on Spotify, Google, Radio Public, Pocket Cast, Apple, Overcast, Castbox, Stitcher, Amazon, and Audible. And if you don't like it, it's not my fault. It's your fault. Hell, nothing's ever my fault. Kyrie is never, ever wrong, people. All right, everybody, welcome back to Sports Frenzy 2.0. I am the Maestro, Kevin Crane, flying solo this week. Been under the weather, did a preemptive strike. Told your Uncle Dave the Conquistador, take it easy this week, bud. Stay at home, stay away from me in case I'm contagious. I got better, but it's okay. Dave deserved a week off anyway. Spend with Mrs. C and the kids. Well, I call them kids because I've seen them grow up, but they're grown men now, so. Anyway, segment 2 here, taping on November the 1st, 2023. This will drop Thursday morning, November the 2nd. Time for college football, but first, going to do not nearly as well as your Uncle Dave, but got to go through all the platforms, everywhere you can find Sports Frenzy 2.0. You found us, but you have options. We are on Spotify, Google, Radio Public, Pocket Casts, Apple, Overcast, Castbox, Amazon Music, Audible, and iHeartRadio. Don't forget to check out the Facebook page. Tomorrow night, Thursday, as I tape, of course, Thursday night, the 2nd, I will have all 8 panelists' football picks posted, as well as all of our NASCAR picks for the final race, and we'll discuss NASCAR in the 3rd segment. Facebook page is where you go to find links to each and every episode. Facebook page is where you go to find all of our picks, whether it's baseball season, NASCAR, football, all of our picks every weekend posted on the Facebook page. All right, college football. First and foremost, even though I still tend to abide by the AP poll, I'm old school. People my age or older will remember when it was the AP and the UPI polls that decided who the national champion was or were, when it was a split vote. Something about that I miss. I know it's not an exact science. Hell, I don't even think the college football playoff format is an exact science, but I guess it's better. But anyway, the first college football playoff poll came out. And as I mentioned, I prefer to go with the AP poll. Anytime we start talking about picks from here on out, the rankings will be AP rankings, not CFP rankings. And of course, they've got to be all cool and different. Ohio State's number 1 in the CFP rankings. Georgia's number 2. Oh, because Ohio State's beaten Notre Dame and beaten Penn State. Whatever. We'll see how it plays out. Michigan and Florida State round out the top 4. But the teams we root for, of course, here locally, Notre Dame smashes Pittsburgh 58-7 this past weekend. They are number 15, not getting a lot of love from the CFP committee. They're number 12 in the AP as they stand 7-2. with a big game coming up down in the Carolinas playing Clemson, who they are in a lot of disarray right now. But bad news for the Irish. Tight end Mitchell Evans tore his ACL in the Pittsburgh game. He is done for the year. And we all know how important the tight ends are for Notre Dame and that offense. Just look at Michael Mayer, now playing, of course, for that dysfunctional Raiders team out in Vegas. Of course, the Bears have got a Notre Dame tight end who's actually finally playing well after getting a contract extension. We'll see. We'll see what happens the rest of the year. With 2 losses, Notre Dame, if it was a 12-team playoff like what we're going to have next year, they would probably be, in my opinion, a lock to make it because they're probably going to run the table. But 2 losses, not going to make it into the last year where there's only 4 teams in the college football playoff. Miami Hurricanes, of course, shot themselves in the foot a few weeks back with that awful, awful loss to Georgia Tech. They are 6-2. They beat Virginia in overtime, 29-26. This team is typical of what we've seen from Miami Hurricanes squads over the last decade or so, at least, if not 2 decades. They bumble and stumble their way to a couple decent wins, but then they lose a couple, 2, 3 games that they never had any business losing. So they've beaten Texas A&M this year, and they've beaten Clemson. I don't fault them for losing to North Carolina. North Carolina is a good team, even though they're starting to fade. But that Georgia Tech loss is just a killer. I'm not saying they would have been in contention for a Final Four playoff spot, but 7-1 right now would have looked a hell of a lot better than 6-2. And 7-1 was within their grasp. I think it was a few months ago we talked about the unique situation in Iowa. Nepotism! Nepotism! Even though Gwyneth Paltrow doesn't like being called a Nepo baby. Go sell some more vagina-scented candles and shut up and enjoy your millions upon millions and tens of millions of dollars, Nepo baby. Brian Ferentz, of course, the son of head coach Kirk Ferentz at Iowa. We told you about the unique stipulations that were on him, where his team had to score a certain amount of points, his offense, in order for him to keep his job. Well, they've already seen the writing on the wall. Brian Ferentz will not return as Iowa offensive coordinator in 2024. Look at that. A blow to nepotism. Yeehaw! And of course, we've talked about the fact that Colorado started off like a house on fire. Deion Sanders soaking up all the adulation. Man of the minute, man of the hour, man of the week. Well, guess what? Now Colorado has come crashing down to earth. They're going to have to win a game or two they're not expected to win in order to become bowl eligible. They did not beat UCLA, but a lot of the players had jewelry stolen from them in the Rose Bowl locker room when they were playing UCLA. And of course, now Deion wants his players compensated for losing their jewelry, their bling. And I went off on this about the pro player Demarcus Robinson here recently. Why do you have to wear thousands and tens of thousands of dollars in jewelry. It's just stupid. It's just stupid. This is why, with every passing day, I admire Barry Sanders more and more. Barry Sanders, humble, scores touchdowns in the NFL, told everybody, just act like you've been there before. When they asked him why he didn't celebrate or spike the ball, he says, I act like I've been here before and I'm going to be here again. And it ties in to me with this whole bling thing. Got to show off how important I am, what a big shot I am, what a superstar I am. You know, it tells me you're insecure. You're insecure men. Secure men don't have to flash tens of thousands of dollars in gold jewelry. But of course, look who their coach is. All right, last week's slate of college football games was not all that great. So we'll just attack the highlights here and move on to this week's picks because we've got a full slate of picks this week. Oregon established themselves again as a possible playoff team, even though Washington, of course, beat them. So Washington is going to have to lose, really, to open up something for Oregon. But Oregon goes in to Utah, beats up the Utes pretty bad, 35-6. So again, Oregon's on the fringes there. They're waiting. They're waiting for somebody to stumble. And somebody will have to stumble. But Oregon could be very, very dangerous if they get into the college football playoff. Another game with two ranked opponents. Very, very few and far between this past weekend. Number 20, Duke, playing number 18, Louisville. Of course, Louisville coming off a very, very embarrassing loss. I believe that was to Pittsburgh, who then got shellacked by Notre Dame. Well, that was a one-and-done fluke. Of course, Louisville shellacked Notre Dame. Louisville shuts Duke out, 23-0. So Duke, I guess they are who we thought they were. They're not the old Duke football program from 20, 30 years ago. They're better than that, but still, they're still a basketball school. And we'll talk more about that later. Then finally, number 21, Tennessee, a tough road test going into play Kentucky on the road. 6-point win, 33-27. So Kentucky, another one of those teams in the SEC that sometimes gets overhyped early in the season. They win 3 or 4 or 5 games in conference and out of conference, and everybody starts going crazy about them. And then we kind of see, just like Duke, who they really and truly are. They're a middle road, middle of the pack SEC team. So Tennessee wins 33-27. Let's move on to this week's picks. As I said, there's a lot of games to run through here, so let's do it, kids. Thursday night, November the 2nd, TCU at Texas Tech. 2 middle-of-the-pack Big 12 teams. TCU for me and Dave, Nick and Doug. Aaron, Bill, and Sam go with Texas Tech. Friday, November the 3rd, 2 middle-of-the-pack ACC teams. And these the reason why we pick these matchups all the time is because these are the ones with the closest point spreads, the hardest to pick, because that's what we do. We don't take the cakewalk games. Boston College at Syracuse. I love the way Boston College has been playing lately. I'll take them. So does Dave, Bill, and Doug. Sam, Nick, and Aaron of the 7 panelists with their picks in. They're taking Syracuse. Saturday, November the 4th. Kansas State has been playing really well lately. They get into the top 25 in the AP poll. But now they go in to play number 7, Texas. I'll tell you this. The way Kansas State has played the last month or so, I was tempted to pick the upset. I still don't think I trust Steve Sarkisian at all as a head coach, but Texas has just got the better talent. And they're at home. So everybody, Texas across the board. Jimbo Fisher and Texas A&M, the Aggies, go in to play Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss, number 11 Ole Miss. Here's where I'm going on an island. Don't know if it's going to be the last time here. I don't think it will be. Now, I'm winning the football picks right now. Still got well over half the season left, including the bowl games. Not trying to get cocky or arrogant, but I've been doing pretty good as of late. So I'm on an island here. I think this is the game where Lane Kiffin shits the bed. There are a handful of coaches who are very, very good head football coaches, but they're not great. And there's a reason for that. And Jimbo Fisher's one of them. Mike Gundy's one. We'll talk about him in a minute. Mike Leach was one. God rest that pirate soul, that magnificent bastard. I loved him. But he was one of these coaches who you could count on for 8-9 wins a year. But when their team started to creep close to the top 10, they would find a way to lose a big game. And this is where I think Lane Kiffin loses. Jimbo Fisher will win this game. I'm taking Texas A&M on the road. Everybody else takes Ole Miss. Been a rough week for Clemson. They got beat up by Miami of Florida. My Hurricanes showed up. This was a couple weeks ago, of course. But Clemson lost again this past weekend, I believe, to NC State. Not looking good at all. We got Dabo Swinney yelling at callers on radio programs, podcasts. A lot of pressure on him now as Clemson has underachieved this year big time. And ever since Trevor Lawrence left and went to the NFL, the program just hasn't really been the same. Number 12, Notre Dame comes in, trying to keep alive their hopes for a New Year's Day bowl. The panel says they will. Convincingly, all of us take Notre Dame to beat Clemson. It's Bedlam time. Number 10, Oklahoma, on the road playing Oklahoma State, another team that's been playing really well as of late with Mike Gundy. Another one where I was really, really thinking about it for a hot minute to take the upset. But just like with Texas and Kansas State, Oklahoma, even though they just lost here recently, Oklahoma's too talented. Everybody across the board here on our panel taking the Sooners. Coastal Carolina at Old Dominion. Everybody taking Coastal Carolina except for Sam. He takes Old Dominion. – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – –– Everybody's taking App State except for Aaron. He goes with Marshall. Tough game here. Number 22, Kansas at Iowa State. Again, another Big 12 matchup where you've got one team ranked, another team not ranked but has been playing really, really good football, in this case, Iowa State at home. Kansas has been a little bit of a roller coaster ride, but I think that program has turned a corner. And I really think, especially with Texas and Oklahoma leaving, Kansas is going to end up being a very significant team to watch in the Big 12 in the future. I've got Kansas, so does Bill, Nick, Doug, and Aaron. Dave and Sam take Iowa State. Utah State at San Diego State. Utah State for everybody, even though they're on the road, except Nick and Doug. They go with the home team, San Diego State. Big showdown in the Pac-12. Of course, final year for the Pac-12. I don't think it's going to be the Pac-2. Washington State and Oregon State are going to have to figure something out. Number 5, Washington at number 24, USC. I'll tell you what, I have no love for the Trojans. None. Lincoln Riley has done a piss-poor job outside of Caleb Williams with this team. Here's a memo to coach. You need to be able to play defense as well as offense, Lincoln. And I'm hearing people say, oh, this week it's going to be the week for the Trojans. They're at home. They're going to figure it out, and they're going to pull off the upset. Bullshit. All of a sudden, you're going to tell me overnight they're going to figure out how to play defense? They're going to all of a sudden change personnel and bring in brand new recruits that know how to play defense? The entire panel agrees with me. Washington on the road. All 7 of our picks that are in go with the Huskies. Kentucky at Mississippi State. Yes, another mid-level SEC matchup. Mississippi State just played an awful game a couple weeks ago against, I believe it was Arkansas. I think it was a 7-3 game. Mississippi State's offense is not good. And we just talked about Kentucky getting beat at home by Tennessee. I still think Kentucky's the better team. Everybody on the panel except for Dave agrees with me. Dave is taking the home team, Mississippi State. Oh, it's island time for the Maestro again. Island boy. Always fun. Always fun because these are the type of games that make this whole competition interesting. When one of us goes out on an island picking against the rest of the panel. I have not been impressed with Alabama this year at all. They're playing too many close games. Doesn't matter what the level of the competition is, they seem to just play close games each and every week. LSU has one of the most explosive, if not the most explosive offenses in the country. Yes, they have an idiot for a head coach in Brian Kelly. What is it? But they say even the blind squirrel finds a nut once in a while. Well, in this case, this weekend, Brian Kelly is the blind squirrel, and he will find the nut. And the nut is Alabama. LSU over Alabama. Of course, nobody else on the panel agrees with me. They all take the safe pick. They go with the Crimson Tide. My beloved Miami Hurricanes, again, another team, never know what to expect week in and week out. They can beat Texas A&M, they can beat Clemson, but they can't beat Georgia Tech, and they can barely figure out ways to beat Virginia. I still don't have a lot of faith in my own team. And I have been impressed enough with North Carolina State, especially considering this is a home game for the Wolfpack. I hate to say it, Miami loses again this week. Third loss of the year for the Hurricanes. Doug agrees with me. Dave, Sam, Bill, Nick, and Aaron, more loyal than I am, even though they're not Canes fans, they're going with Miami. Boise State at Fresno State. Guess that name, after all those years of playing top-level football, even competing against the big boys with Boise State, doesn't mean jack crap anymore. Because our panelists, 7 picks in, everybody's taking Fresno State over Boise State. Then finally, upset alert. Number 20, UCLA. Visiting Arizona. Arizona is another team that is playing very, very good football as of late. Dave and I, this has worked out well for us when he and I are simpatico, when we're thinking along the same lines. Last segment, we talked about the Thursday night NFL game. He and I, only ones thinking the Steelers at home will beat the Titans. Well, here again, he and I are doing it. And this has worked 3 or 4 times this year so far. I have a lot of confidence when Dave and I agree on a pick and nobody else does. Arizona will upset UCLA. Dave and I take Arizona. The rest of the panel goes with the UCLA Bruins. So there you go, kids. There's your college football wrap-up. Although I do want to bring up one more quick college football point. Now, I almost gave her my Clint Eastwood badass of the week. But hear me out on this. Okay, Jackson State's Leilani Armenta became the first female to score in an FCS HBCU, of course, historically black college or university game, as she kicked 3 extra points. Now, they have another kicker on the team who also kicks some of the extra points and does all the field goal kicking. So in a way, I'm not diminishing it, but in a way, this was kind of a little bit of a stunt. She did kick 3 extra points. Great for her. I just don't know how overly impressed I'm supposed to be with this. But I still congratulate her. Way to go, Leilani Armenta. First female to score in an FCS HBCU game. All right, kids, there you go. Segment 2 is over and done. One final segment left. We will discuss the World Series, the final race of the 2023 NASCAR Cup season. I will have a Clint Eastwood badass of the week. We'll talk a little bit NBA. Do have a couple dumbasses for you, but we also have very significant moment of silence that the news just broke here a few hours ago before our taping. All that in a jam-packed, awesome third and final segment here, Sports Frenzy 2.0 with the Maestro solo this week. We'll be right back. Feeling mildly fatigued? Need a day off even if you just took one a few days ago? Make $30 million a year but just don't want to work for it? You need to join the NBA Load Management Club right now. When they're not napping or texting, guest lecturers Anthony Davis and Kyrie Irving will describe foolproof ways to earn tens of thousands of dollars by not doing anything. Sports Frenzy 2.0, available on Spotify, Google, Radio Public, Pocket Casts, and wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, is currently negotiating with LeBron James to bring his popular How to Make the Hall of Fame Without Really Trying webinar live and in person to the Load Management Club. Thanks again to Sports Frenzy 2.0 and all you apathetic fans out there for making us a success. All right, third and final segment, everybody. Your weekly fix of politically incorrect sports commentary is almost over, but still so much more to go in 30 minutes. Let's start off with the World Series. As I'm taping here on November the 1st, 2023, the Texas Rangers are up 3-1 on the Arizona Diamondbacks, despite the fact that they lost arguably their best player, Adolis Garcia, and one of the most disappointing players of the last 3 years or 4 years, Max Scherzer, both out for the entire rest of the World Series after getting injured in Game 3. Doesn't matter. Rangers stepped up in Game 4, blew out the Diamondbacks. Unbelievable, historic run here in terms of the Rangers do not lose playoff games this year on the road. They just do not. Now, of course, next week we'll wrap things up here. We'll let you know the final outcome. We'll see tonight if on November the 1st the Rangers can close it out in Arizona, or do they head back home and close things out on their home turf. But quick note, and then we move on to NASCAR. You guys know I'm not a big fan of buying championships. I know sports are a business. And yes, there are big market teams, big pocket, deep pocket owners who can afford to spend. We saw this year in baseball with Steve Cohen and the Mets and how they laughably fell on their face despite having the biggest payroll of all time. Of course, we can refer back to the ultra disappointing Max Scherzer I just mentioned when we reference that, as well as Justin Verlander. But the Rangers, despite the fact it's a great story, of course, Road Warriors, the fact they've never won a World Series before, on the verge of doing it for the very first time in franchise history, they spent money, kids. They spent a lot of money. Look at what they paid for Marcus Semien. Look at what they paid for Corey Seager. Look at what they paid for Jacob deGrom. Remember him? That's what, about $40 million that's been sitting on the bench for the better part of the season. And now Max Scherzer, I am pretty sure that the Mets are picking up the tab on a big chunk of his contract, but still, the Texans are an example of if you spend, you win. And I believe you got to have a good mix of smart front office people who know how to spend wisely. Again, look at the Mets. Look at the Yankees. Yeah, let's stick in New York. Nothing makes me happier than to point out the flaws of New York sports teams. And right now, there's plenty of them. The Braves know how to acquire talent and then know how to spend the money to make it work. Look at Freddie Freeman. They let Freddie Freeman walk. And then they trade for Olsen from the A's. It's like nothing ever changed. Now, of course, they didn't win this year. But still, best team in the National League. They're doing something right. They know how to spend their money. Now, the Texas Rangers look like they're following that same prototype. But of course, the key, as we've been saying here for months on Sports Frenzy with the Rangers, is they have the best manager in baseball when they lured Bruce Bochy out of retirement. That was the key. There's only a half dozen managers in baseball who are truly great. And Bochy tops the list. All right, so again, next week we will give you our season wrap-up for baseball. If the Diamondbacks make a miraculous comeback, we, of course, will discuss it, describe it, detail it for you here on Sports Frenzy. Now we move on to the final weekend of NASCAR for 2023, the 36th and final race of the Cup schedule. We have 4 contenders for the 2023 NASCAR Cup Championship. Those 4 drivers are Christopher Bell, Ryan Blaney, William Byron, and Kyle Larson. Of course, last weekend we had the elimination race to pare it down from 8 to 4 at Martinsville. I won't say it's the most interesting race ever, but it had its moments. Chase Elliott, my pick. Of course, got to remember, I can only pick one driver in the chase at one time. So I had to pick 10 different drivers throughout the chase in our competition here among our panelists on Sports Frenzy. So I know you're thinking, why didn't you just pick 10 of the 16 who are in the chase, dude? Well, once guys get eliminated, they tend to kind of fade out. Look at Kevin Harvick. Kevin Harvick got eliminated after the first round and really hasn't done a lot since. I would hope in his final race here at Phoenix, a track he loves, that he is dominant at. He's won there 9 times, that he'll show up and have a great race. But I took Chase Elliott because I needed to save Christopher Bell, figuring, of course, that he was going to be in the finals, the last race. Chase Elliott, usually very good at Martinsville, and he had the lead for quite a while. They gambled, hoping for a caution. About halfway, 2/3 of the way through the final segment, didn't get it. So unfortunately, he had to pit before he ran out of gas. So our Frenzy Cup competition is very, very tight. I am in the lead. Mrs. C is 9 back. The Elder Statesman 10 back. And we have 3. I'm assuming Mrs. C's pick is not in yet. She's still got an hour or so before our deadline, but I'm pretty sure I know who she's going to pick. So it's going to be 3 of the 4 Cup finalists battling it out amongst our 3 Frenzy Cup finalists. Let's do these picks, just get them out of the way, and then we'll jump back and discuss other NASCAR news. Our picks for the final race of the playoffs. Coming up November the 5th, 2023, the Cup Championship from Phoenix. I'm taking Christopher Bell. So is Doug. Dave's taking Ryan Blaney. So is Nick. And I am assuming so will Mrs. C. Sam is taking William Byron. Bill and Aaron take Joey Logano. So I've got Christopher Bell. Jen, 9 back, I'm assuming takes Ryan Blaney. Sam, 10 back, takes William Byron. Now, the one thing we do in our Frenzy Cup competition that's different from what the final Cup race rules are in NASCAR is that we will still award stage points to the final 4 drivers, whereas NASCAR does not do that. NASCAR only cares about the final order of finish. We just thought it was stupid. We understand why NASCAR does it the way they do it, but we think for our purposes, it's stupid that you're actually smart enough to be able to save a driver and he ends up getting to the championship race, and then you have to penalize yourself while everybody else is getting stage points and your driver is not. So we will award stage points for Christopher Bell, William Byron, Ryan Blaney. Nobody has Kyle Larson. Everybody's pretty much used him up in their picks. So, real quick, Martinsville. Martin Truex Jr. had the pole. Ryan Blaney won the race. Him and Denny Hamlin were going back and forth. Little bit of beating and banging. Ultimately, Denny Hamlin again comes up short. Can't make it into the Final Four. Can't participate for the 2023 Cup title. Ryan Blaney has looked, I'll admit it, very impressive this year, especially as of late. So it's going to be a good pick for Mrs. C. I'm hoping Christopher Bell will get the pole, as he has done a bunch of times this year, put himself in at least a good position to start the race. Now, Chevy won the Manufacturers Championship, I believe, for the 3rd year in a row. Basically, when the Martinsville race started, they had locked up the Manufacturers Championship, but could have put this in the dumbasses of the week. The Chevy Camaro pace car broke down. They had to go to a backup. So good for Chevy, bad for Chevy. Eric Almirola has finally, over the last couple of years, he's been kind of back and forth. What am I going to do? Am I going to retire? Am I going to keep racing? Well, now he says he is done. He is not returning to Stewart-Haas Racing in 2024, despite the fact that Martinsville was his best finish for 2023. Maybe because the pressure was off and he was at peace with his decision. So, Eric Almirola finishes second at Martinsville, but he is not coming back to Stewart-Haas. Sounds like he might be open to racing part-time in the future in the Cup Series. And then the sad thing is, NASCAR is a sponsor-driven sport, as you guys all know. Big, notable sponsor in NASCAR. Been with Eric Almirola for many, many years. Smithfield will be leaving NASCAR as well. That's a big blow. That might be an even bigger blow than Almirola leaving. Losing a big sponsor like Smithfield, that hurts. That hurts. Ford will stay with the Mustang in 2024 in the Cup Series, but You guys can tell me what this means. They're switching to the dark horse body for the Mustang. So sticking with the Mustang, but it'll now be the dark horse body. All right, so there you go. Watch in between your football on Sunday. Indulge, watch the NASCAR Cup Championship from Phoenix. All right, moving on to the NBA. Still early on in the season. The Orlando Magic are 2-2. My team follow them through the box scores as best I can. They're not really on TV all that much. Very odd start to the season for them. They beat two teams they were supposed to beat. They've lost to two teams that they probably should have lost to. They've played well, but I'm kind of concerned that this is a team built on young players. Of course, last year, Paolo Banchero, the number 1 overall pick, was great. He is off to a really slow start this year, not putting up very good numbers at all. And the 2 high draft picks the Magic got here in the 2023 draft, from what I can tell, they haven't played. Jamal Mosley is not playing them. They are getting DNP coach's decision every night. So we'll see where this goes for the Magic. The East is very tough. I guess that's relative, though. You know, you get past the Bucks, you get past the Celtics. Same thing in the West. You get past the Nuggets. When I say tough, there are some good teams there in the middle of the pack that, again, a young team like the Magic, it's going to be difficult for them to leapfrog and get into the playoffs. My hope is that they can somehow be good enough to get into the play-in tournament. Oh, and of course, we're starting that mid-season tournament crap this weekend. I still don't understand it. I still don't care. It is not bringing in the casual NBA fan. Oh, but it works for soccer. Comparing soccer fans to NBA fans is pathetic and ridiculous. 76ers are finally done, over. They've rid themselves of James Harden, the biggest cancer in the history of major professional sports. Now he is the West Coast's problem. James Harden has been traded to the LA Clippers. Have fun with that. He is a pathetic, nasty, selfish human being. And it's disgusting. Hundreds of millions of dollars that he's made for not showing up in the playoffs, for being a stat whore, and for being a despicable, selfish human being. On a positive note, before we leave the NBA to go to college basketball, Rick Carlisle, second stint as Indiana Pacers head coach. He's got a young team. His record is not impressive here. Of course, he won a title with the Dallas Mavericks. But shockingly, a team that's going to show patience. The Indiana Pacers signed Rick Carlisle to a multi-year extension. I like this. We all know he's a great head coach. Doesn't matter if he's struggled in terms of the record since he's been back with the Pacers. He has not had a stable lineup. I think the Pacers have made some dumb moves getting rid of Sabonis. Domantas Sabonis was idiotic. But Now they're starting to build another good young core with the Pacers. It's smart to keep a stable presence, especially one like Rick Carlisle, up at the front of the organization. All right, the NHL. Dave's not here, so we won't talk about that too much, but the Blackhawks, his beloved Blackhawks, are 3-6, 6 total points. Let's see how the young players progress over the season. The Ottawa Senators, Shane Pinto. This stuff doesn't just happen in the NFL. He gets a 41-game suspension for gambling. Never will understand it. Never will understand it. And of course, sorry, I promised you college basketball. I made a comment in the first segment about Duke and their football program and how they're a basketball school. Well, this is more proof of that. Even though the football program has been better as of late, Duke lands the top 2024 prospect. Cooper Flagg will play for the Duke Blue Devils. But of course, given the current rules, everybody is saying he will be a one and done, and he is already considered the number one prospect to go at the top of the 2025 NBA draft. There you go, kids. Gotta love the NBA. Succeeding despite their stupidity. Mid-season tournaments, feasting on one and dones, immature players coming in, not ready for the pressure and the spotlight. The alien is doing a brilliant job as commissioner. Just brilliant. I promised you a Clint Eastwood badass of the week. Probably should have done this when I was talking about the Diamondbacks earlier. Of course, the Arizona Diamondbacks, Zach Gallen, excellent young pitcher. They knocked off the Philadelphia Phillies. And of course, Phillies fans were doing a little bit of whining and crying and moaning and complaining. Zach Gallen had a great social media post where he basically said, and I'm paraphrasing here, "Hey, Philly fans, check out your next game." And of course, he had a post of spring training tickets for the Phillies now on sale. Pretty clever. Pretty clever. Zach Gallen, way to kind of rub it in to Philly fans. You are my Clint Eastwood badass of the week. Now, I mentioned there was a massive moment of silence here. Just happened here a few hours ago before taping the announcement. Some people loved him, some people hated him. Yes, he made mistakes, but he was old school, and sometimes I admire old school. Bob Knight, of course, most prominently known as the NCAA championship winning head basketball coach of the Indiana Hoosiers. And again, we could go on and on and on about his missteps. And I'm sure that Dave will want to chime in on this next week, so we'll probably have a follow-up on it in our next episode. And again, I know there are a lot of people, I'm not going to say snowflakes, because some of the things that Bob Knight did really came close, if not crossing lines, came really close to crossing lines. He was abrasive. He was prickly. at times nasty, but he was also at times very insightful, very funny, very smart, and he was a coach and a leader. Thoughts and prayers to the family and friends, the IU community, for the passing of Bob Knight. And then, in a very strange and bizarre death overseas, Adam Johnson played briefly for the Pittsburgh Penguins in the NHL, was playing overseas for the Nottingham Panthers in the UK. And this happens. Surprised it doesn't happen more often than it does, but another player's skate slashed Adam Johnson's throat, is my understanding, during a game. They had to stop play, of course, get everybody out of the arena, put up a barricade around him on the ice as they tended to him. Again, it shocks me this doesn't happen more often. But Adam Johnson, U.S. hockey player overseas playing for the Nottingham Panthers, dies apparently due to another player's skate slashing his throat. All right, and as we are wont to do here on Sports Frenzy, we go from tragedy to idiocy. It's time to pivot. Yes, I know that kind of takes on added meaning, and we'll discuss that in the weekend edition, your Saturday morning hangover cure. Of course, pivot is a reference to Friends. And, of course, Matthew Perry is going to be a moment of silence that we discuss on the weekend edition. But we have just a couple dumbasses to discuss to lead you out on this week's episode here on November the 1st, dropping November the 2nd. First up, the NFL. There's a reason why a lot of people chime in and call it the no fun league. The University of Houston, of course, you would think the NFL, the NCAA would kind of be partners in terms of promoting the game of football in general as a whole. Working together, of course, NCAA players get drafted and go into the NFL. Should be a very beneficial, a mutually beneficial relationship. But of course, the NFL, I mocked Adam Silver, the alien, and how quote unquote great of a job he's done with his league. Well, Roger Goodell, he can make a lot of mistakes, and he has made a lot of mistakes. The NFL sends a cease and desist letter to the University of Houston because they dared to wear tribute uniforms. I think they were called Houston Pride, something similar to that. And of course, if you kids remember, the Tennessee Titans used to be the Houston Oilers. So the University of Houston came out with these uniforms that had the color scheme of the old Houston Oilers. University of Houston, Houston Oilers, what's the problem? Oh, the NFL doesn't like it. Cease and desist. You stop doing that, University of Houston. Hey, Roger, why don't you fucking find another overseas fucking city to play an NFL game in and stop harassing the kids at the University of Houston? Okay, they didn't have an oil derrick on the side of their helmet, from what I could tell. So let's just calm down, slow your roll, figure out something else to fuck up in the NFL. Even though it's the easiest job in the world, it's a cash cow. You still manage to figure out ways to fuck it up. Finally, chauvinism is not dead. The LA Dodgers, according to a lawsuit, 2022 charter flight. The Dodger players asked for, quote, white, young, thin flight attendants for their charter flight. Ah, great. And you wonder why women think all men are pigs. Thanks, LA Dodgers. Thanks a lot. Here's an idea. Why don't you try to overachieve for once with your underachieving manager, Dave Roberts, and win another fucking World Series? That's it for Sports Frenzy. I'm the Maestro. We'll check you out next week. Bye.